Hurricane Matthew was one of the most destructive storms to hit Fayetteville since Hurricane Hazel in 1954.
Matthew definitely impacted our community a lot more than any of the other events that we've had. The flooding was larger, the winds were greater, but definitely the flooding was one of the greater impacts to our community. 90% of the areas that were impacted in our community with flooding are areas that are not identified in the flood-prone areas in our flood mapping. So those are areas that were not expected to be flooded.
Hurricane Matthew was a record-setting storm that will affect our community for years to come. It formed on September 23, 2016 as the southernmost Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic Basin, having struck Haiti and Cuba and setting records for strongest land-measured wind speeds with gusts recorded at 174 miles per hour. Hurricane Matthew set its eye on the Carolinas.
We were very concerned here in Fayetteville when we saw the destruction of Hurricane Matthew as it was moving up the coast.
On October 8th, Matthew made landfall in the U.S. as a Category 1 hurricane. After the storm had passed, it left behind a trail of destruction and shattered lives, having flooded homes and killing 34 people in the U.S. At the time, Hurricane Matthew was the 10th most destructive hurricane to strike the U.S., causing an estimated $10 billion of damage in the U.S. alone, damaging more than 1 million structures and cutting power to more than 3.5 million customers between Florida and Virginia. In Cumberland County alone, it dropped over 17 inches of rain, killed 2 people, flooded multiple neighborhoods, in addition to damaging hundreds of buildings. Even after the storm, a PwC employee died during an accident while working on repairing damage caused by the flooding.
But I was honestly devastated to go out and see the community and to see the amount of damage that this community suffered and the hurting of our residents was very, very difficult. I was also amazed that our first responders were out there day in and day out. You had folks in our public services department, our bus drivers, all made this a priority, and in many cases spent time, hours and days away from their family to help our community. So it was devastating to see, but it was really great to see our employees reaching out and making a difference.
At least within the city, we had about 257 or so odd calls reported that we thought at the time resulted in about 703 rescues or evacuation. We've since tabulated all that once again and done a quality check on it and found out that we've actually rescued somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,300 or so individuals, which could be just assist evacuations or actually pulling them from the water. Regardless of how that was accomplished, and it was neighbor helping neighbor too, so undoubtedly there were many more people in harm's way that people banded together and ended up saving.
During the hurricane, the number of people in emergency shelters in Cumberland County at any one time peaked around 500.
As with anything, it rises up in a similar fashion and trickles off.
Almost immediately, cleanup began as the community came together. As the city transitioned from a rescue phase to a recovery phase, wheels were already in motion.
The city, again, having experienced storms in the past, we were prepared and we already had a pre-contract with a debris hauler so that we were way ahead of the curve for many people in our state. So once we moved into our full recovery efforts, we already had a contractor lined up who was able to help us with the debris removal, particularly vegetative, but also furniture. Anything that was damaged by the storm, building materials, we just assisted our residents in getting it to the curb. And between city crews and our contract crews, we were able to have the city cleaned up much quicker than any of our other counterparts around the state.
Within 2 months, the contractor picked up more than 71,000 cubic yards of storm waste in the form of vegetative and construction and demolition debris. To help speed up the process of rebuilding, Fayetteville City Council met on October 10th to approve several measures. Council approved suspending hourly parking limits in downtown Fayetteville for 2 months, waived permitting fees for 2 months for building permits related to Hurricane Matthew recovery, and made $900,000 in funding available for the Disaster Recovery Housing Repair Program. And finally, the council worked closely with the state and federal leadership, along with other community leaders, to ensure that Fayetteville received the assistance we needed. The city also hired a recently retired director to come back as a senior project manager for city projects related to Hurricane Matthew recovery efforts.
My goal is just to make sure the projects are moving forward, or are moving, and it's disheartening for me to see one just held up because of just a glitch in our process somewhere. So my job is to really look for those projects that are slow or not moving and find the problem and get them moving again.
So far, $4.7 million has been awarded for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program from the state to either acquire homes damaged by the storm, help residents reconstruct their homes, or help pay to elevate the homes. In addition, the Golden Leaf Foundation has awarded close to $4 million for debris removal, drainage improvements, and helping to repair the Rayconda connector. The city is also applying for funding from Golden Leaf to repair cameras used by the police department and for repairs to the Kings Grant connector. In all, the government of the city of Fayetteville has suffered $21 million of damage to infrastructure and property. The city of Fayetteville requested FEMA funding for 33 of the projects, of which FEMA has obligated funding for 31.
We also recently received notification that both the city and Cumberland County together will receive $34 million to help us with the needs of our residents. And some of those dollars can be used for our multifamily new construction projects, our homeowner recovery programs, and there will be some projects that the city does individually, some the county does, and some that are more collaborative efforts.
Well, I think the smaller projects will take a lot less time than the larger projects. And when I mean by larger projects, I'm talking about the dams that we have. We have a few dams that are being repaired now, and those will take maybe as much as 2 years to complete. But other projects like the creek cleaning and some parks projects that we have had to repair, those I think will all wrap up in a short time period frame, and maybe probably within 12 to 15 months is my guess.
The key to a successful response after a traumatic storm like Hurricane Matthew is that different organizations came together for a common cause.
When we went into full response mode, I was down in the EOC with my counterpart, Amy Cannon, with the county. We were there with representatives from every utility, including Public Works Commission, power companies. We were also there with people from the Red Cross, social services, and a tremendous number of nonprofit agencies who were all there and available to us as we responded to the storm. That help and that collaboration went beyond just the response, but also into the recovery. We had people from all over the country, all over the state coming together to help us clear roads, clear debris from homes, as well as to donate furniture to not only city staff who had lost their homes, but also to help people in our community. That level of community involvement was just simply amazing.
I can't say enough about the non-governmental agencies that have come together, and the agencies everybody's familiar with, like Red Cross and Salvation Army and Baptist Men, do the lion's share of the work a lot of times, even in the response phase. But for the faith-based community and civic organizations within Fayetteville and Cumberland County, they are really carrying the long-term load. And we're very fortunate to have an executive director now for this coalition of faith-based groups that have come together for long-term recovery. And it's just amazing to watch it work as people's lives start to come back together. Without that, I don't know what we would do. And we were told by FEMA that that model had been kind of pushed forth as maybe a potential model for the nation, for somebody who wanted to start such a framework from scratch.
There were also several lessons learned.
I mean, I think it comes down to planning, better communication, working with our community partners, and not just a day before the event. It's an ongoing process. So I think that if you continue to keep open lines of communication and work on your disaster recovery plan and make it a priority for the organization, I think it will help us with future disasters.
One of the roles that we have here in the city is to be prepared for what if. And I'm very proud to say that we learned a lot from Hurricane Matthew, and if we ever have another event like that, I'm sure that the community and both the city will come together as we did before to make sure that we recover as quickly as possible.